Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 16, Episode 142. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Friday. Steelers Nation Day, the Pittsburgh Steelers wrapping a bow on Week 2 of OTAs. Heard plenty from the assistant coaches and from the players themselves. So lots of little nuggets to talk about as Pittsburgh moves through their spring program. They'll have mandatory minicamp beginning next week, and so should have full attendance, although I think attendance has been largely strong for OTA. So, Dave, how you doing?
All right, happy Friday. I'm doing absolutely fantastic. It's been a while since I've been able to say that. I got my temporary crown in after my root canal, and I'm able to chew on both sides. We're going to have spaghetti on this Friday as well too. And you're coming off of a couple of days where you get to hear all these assistant coaches and several players. It's hope springs eternal type of thing. I even myself find myself a little bit caught up in being maybe a tad bit more optimistic, and it's just I think it's the natural progress of how the off season goes, and you're getting out of draft mode, and you feel like you know a lot. Learned a lot about some of these players, a lot more about some of these players since they were drafted, and you thought that knew a little bit about some of these kind of assistant position coaches, and then getting to hear a lot of them talk over the last several days. And obviously you got mandatory minicamp now on the horizon, and I think it's a great time to be alive right now, especially at this point of the off season, and especially, and look, we got a lot to chew on just since Wednesday, right, with all these assistant coaches. So I'm interested to see what path you take us down. I was so excited. I went back even this morning. I get up obviously about 4:45 and then have to take care of the dog and get some of the morning things knocked out there. But I went back through and tried to watch as much of the video interviews as I could this morning. Spent about an hour and a half on that just to make sure I'm extra prepared today.
Well, shoot, Dave, with the pep in your step, you lead us here. I think you have the right mindset. But for me, the big picture thought that I had from what I thought was most interesting about a couple players dealt with Jaquan Brisker, Riley Nowakowski, and Redmond Wilson. I don't know if you shared any of those thoughts, but dealer's choice here, Dave. You take us where you want to go because you're doing the homework.
I will tell you my biggest takeaway from re-listening to everything, and look, that's obviously a lot to chew on, and hopefully a lot of you listening to this podcast have time to go through like the Steelers YouTube channel and roll through all those videos. Or you're going to spend about 2 hours in doing it if you do it properly.
Or just read them on the website. We'd love for you to click on the website.
Right. And obviously we hope they're doing all that. But in addition to doing that, hopefully people have time to get the full context of it by listening to what everybody had to say. I'll give you my global big takeaway here, and it's not earth-shattering here. I think it goes back to Mike McCarthy and this being his first year. You heard Mike McCarthy during his press conference the other day talk about how important the first year is, and him going back more to his roots. I think you heard a couple of the position coaches even talk about this. I'll tell you what, Joe Witt's a very impressive guy as well too. I think that's another takeaway listening to that long session that he had the other day. Very impressive here. But just the aspect, and I think you get this from several of the position coaches on both sides of football, of the importance of Mike McCarthy, especially with this being the first year in Pittsburgh, with the mix of obviously a lot of veterans, a lot of what do you call it, middle class, and then obviously the young guys here, is the importance of teaching not only the plays and schematics and all, but the why that goes along with that. And I think that's a huge point of emphasis here, especially when you've got such a turnover in the coaching staff, and obviously got a huge influx of young guys and new guys on this team too. I just my global takeaway was how Mike McCarthy focused on this being the first year and how important it is. And then a lot of position coaches really kind of bouncing off the idea that Mike McCarthy really wants to explain not only, the detail of each and every play and the schematics, but the why you're doing it, why the receivers need to have to be so precise on the routes to time up with the quarterback. And then just kind of parlaying off that, Tom Arth talking about the quarterback school and the day one specifically on the quarterbacks. I'm getting the video profiles on those, and then we'll fast forward obviously later into the summer and coming out into the regular season and them doing another video profile so they can see how far they've come. So yeah, I know that's not that hyper focused, I guess, overall, but I found that to be one of the main takeaways that I had is the whole year one thing and the Mike McCarthy of explaining the why.
And I think McCarthy also referenced that there's more cameras at practice than probably the reporters and people who have attended have ever seen before to do things like videotape the quarterbacks. We talked about kind of the 5-camera shoot or the 5 angles they take for quarterbacks to build up that profile from left, right, forward, in front, behind, from the angle, 45-degree angles to really capture the quarterback. And that's good for the coaches, but good for the players. So visually, they know exactly how they look. Some are people who can learn by reading the playbook, some can learn by listening, and some are visual learners. And so having all the cameras there is beneficial for them all. But learning the why, not just the what, is certainly part of buy-in and getting players to understand. I remember back with Matt Canada, one big issue and complaint with him was that he would tell you what to do, but not why you were doing it. I remember backup tight end Jay Sternberger saying that it was much different at Green Bay. I don't think he was there with McCarthy, but point is he, at other stops, they really understood why they were doing it as opposed to just what the role was supposed to be and the purpose. So practice is about doing everything with a purpose. Every drill should be translatable to game circumstance, and every, comment and teach point should have an understanding of the why we're doing this and why this is important. So that is obviously critical when you have this new coaching staff for a pretty veteran-laden team.
I'll tell you another thing that I'm kind of digging into more moving forward here, and we appreciate the advanced analytics of the game and how that how they continue to progress in the advanced analytics. And I guess now I obviously for a while have been hyper focused on the adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat, which now at this point is no longer, it's more archaic. More than anything, but it is such an important stat. But I'm enthralled by Mike McCarthy in this 55 number, and I appreciate him giving us something along those lines to hyper focus on. Mike Tomlin really, what did Mike Tomlin really give us? To hyper focus on, I think as far as advanced analytics, I not a lot.
I don't think advanced analytics was exactly at the forefront of Mike Tomlin's mind.
Not a lot comes to my head here, but I am quite enthralled with, and you heard a couple of the coaches talk about this too, about the 55 number. And for those that maybe haven't had a chance to read up or listen or tune into some of the things that they said, the 55 number revolves around carries and completion totals in a game. Those two numbers combined. So I haven't went back and looked at the overall numbers. Mike McCarthy, I think, was asked a couple of times, you got any kind of win percentages that go along with that? He didn't go that far, but I would imagine because Mike McCarthy, and the number used to be 53 and now it's kind of a long game, I guess Mike McCarthy focuses so much on it now that 55 has become his number. So I'm interested in, as the summer progresses, diving a little bit deeper into that number. And look, that number is just not a standalone number on its own. Just because you have combined running back touches or runs combined with total completions in a game doesn't guarantee a win, because obviously if you lose a turnover battle 3-1, it might not matter whether you had 75 as far as that. So it's all relevant to each other. But it was interesting to hear Mike McCarthy talk about the importance of that 55 number to him, and then how it kind of dictates, into play calling and other areas of specifically offense as well too. And I'm interested to see, how that obviously translates into the defensive side of teams having to combat against the 55 number as well too. So that was another kind of, I guess, global hyper focused thing as part of, man, once we haven't even scratched the surface here as far as things that position coaches and players have said.
And I think running backs coach Ramon Chinyoung Sr. gets an assist because I think he's the one who first mentioned that. And then it was addressed to McCarthy, who then had to respond to that comment about that 55 number. I wonder if it's a little bit of correlation, causation, sort of likely if you give a running back 20 plus carries per game, your win percentage
Sure.
goes up. And some of that just means, well, game circumstance means that you're running the ball late, and you kind of can, typically if you're down multiple scores, don't have the luxury of running the ball 20 times. So if you have 55 completions and touches by your running backs, then that means your offense is probably having a pretty good day overall. So could you sit there and say it's the same as saying if we score 24 plus points per game, our win percentage goes up? Some of that may be true. It certainly sounds like a study up our alley, maybe something for us to dive into or to pass on to Clayton Ecker to check out. Might be a little bit difficult to get all the numbers together and find some of these winning percentages, but I imagine based on Pittsburgh's stagnant offense, they've not hit 55 too often. And so doing that will be a welcome addition as often as possible in 2026.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, now that we got the kind of did you have any big picture takeaways from all this? And once again, we're probably not even going to get to everything today because there's so much to chew on.
Well, like I said, there were three players that have had some intrigue and takeaways from after hearing either from them personally or from coaches talk about them. That's wide receiver Roman Wilson, safety, maybe even linebacker Jaquan Brisker, and fullback tight end do it all rookie Riley Nowakowski. So let's start with Jaquan Brisker, and he seems fired up to be in Pittsburgh, and not even just the standard. He's a new guy and excited to be here, but really happy about the vision that Pittsburgh is apparently showing him, which does not seem to have a cap or a limit in terms of they're going to allow Brisker, per what Brisker told reporters yesterday, to be hyper versatile, to play free safety and in the box and blitz and maybe even play linebacker. Brisker offered that commentary on his own accord, and so could be a real chess piece for DC Patrick Graham.
Yeah, and there we got you're hearing more and more about the terminology here in Pittsburgh of using a star and a money player. One obviously the star being what the kind of the nickel position, and the money being kind of a weak side linebacker position there. We're going to be you're going to start hearing that terminology more in Pittsburgh, more so than obviously in other years. It's terminology that you hear constantly, I think, throughout college football landscape more so, and obviously in some pro teams, but that's going to be more of a focus. And when you talk about Brisker in specifically here, yeah, he does sound like he's fired up. Boy, he's been a little, you could tell some of that fired up on Twitter, and a couple of tweets that he's put out recently as well too. This is a very versatile player, guy that, and I think we talked about a little bit about this after he was signed as well too. A strong and free safety type, a guy that's used to playing both those positions, and he made sure to point out during his interview session the other day about, you're going to probably see him at linebacker some as well too, depending on down distance and personnel usage as well too. And you obviously have a guy in Deshaun Elliott that you hope is back healthy again as well too, and that's another guy that obviously has a lot of box experience and is shown to be able to really excel the closer that he is to the line of scrimmage. So yeah, I just think the overall, one of the things, I think it was Joe Witt or Simmons, talked about forget which one in particular about, which one of them is a cornerback coach, which one's a safety coach. Look, they consider themselves defensive back coaches. And another thing, when they were talking about Jalen Ramsey a few times, you really just don't put the classification now at this point of his career. We get hyper focused into positions. Is this guy a safety? Is he a strong safety? Is he a free safety? Is this guy an inside linebacker? Is this guy a box safety? These are defensive backs. And I think that's the big takeaway there. And I think they really are building the personnel and the depth of this team of being able to call a lot of these safeties and a lot of these corners. Now, look, obviously Joey Porter Jr. is a cornerback. He's going to be on the outside. You expect Jamel Dean to be a cornerback on the outside as well too. But the in between all that, they want these guys to be really versatile. I think another major takeaway, and we've kind of seen it pointed this way. A lot of split safety looks, it feels like, moving forward, whether that be cover 2, cover 4, gives them the ability to disguise. And I think you even heard Brisker talk kind of briefly about that, maybe show one thing. I heard the term cover 0 thrown out at one point during several of these interviews, and that's
Was that from players or coaches?
I
missed that.
I forget which one of them was it. One of the coaches, I think, even threw out a cover 0, just a one-time reference there. And look, I mean, you think about cover 0, you think about Spags in what is it, Kansas City and all like that. And look, do we expect this team to play a lot of cover 0 throughout the season? No, but we and being a fan of following this defense as long as we haven't hardly seen hardly any cover 0 with this team over the years. There has been some, but it's been few and far between. It's just not a term that you hear really thrown out a lot when talking about the Steelers defense over the years. So I just think the versatility of some of these guys, Brisker included. They talked about weaponizing guys. I thought that was a real interesting term when it comes to guys like Patrick Queen or Peyton Wilson, and potentially even a guy like Brisker as well too. So I think that gets you excited. And look, you've heard me talk, more recently, especially the last couple, I don't know, 5, 6 shows, 7 shows, something like that, about the importance of this defense and the impact that a guy like Patrick Graham can make on this team. And I think that filters on down through these other coaches as well too. Most notably Witt and Jason Simmons as well too. When hearing these guys talk as opposed to hearing Austin and some of these previewing, you get a feel of more confidence that these guys really get the bigger picture and being able to implement it more, and you trust more of what comes out of their mouth because it's not so generic overall. So I think that's another takeaway there.
There certainly is some more specificity with these guys that we've heard from the previous coaching staff, but the proof will ultimately, of course, be in the pudding of how this unit performs. And while there's certainly a lot of value in versatility and multiplicity, you got to have still a plan and focus and not put too much on these guys' plate or try to do everything that often you don't do anything. So really kind of walking that line will be important. But the coaches know that. It's a veteran group and they've been in these situations before. But you would expect Graham to, it just basically becomes the free space on the Alex podcast bingo card, but Brisker or Nate Hobbs type of role where he was that sort of quasi linebacker playing in the box a ton. You see that Trayvon Moehrig, whenever he was with the Raiders, similar usage there potentially between Brisker in Pittsburgh this season. So it'll be fun. It'll be interesting. The coaches are embracing that, and you got a really good safety group. You got guys who are physical, who are hitters with ball skills, Brisker, Elliott, Ramsey. I like to look at that group, Dave.
I do as well, too. But once again, it's easy to come out of this week, especially with all this info that's getting thrown at you and conversations from the coaches and the players, to be a lot more excited and optimistic at this point. But it is what it is at this point, where they're not even in pads yet. The real test is obviously going to come once the season starts. You got to be able to communicate. I thought it was interesting. I don't know if it was Witt or Simmons said, "Look, everybody's got to be able to communicate, and talk the same language. It's not. There's no more of this. Well, this is what when you're on the field saying, well, this is what we used to call it here is. They've all got to be able to talk the new Steelers language and all be able to call it the same thing. So that'll be part of the process moving forward throughout the offseason, especially with you've got a lot of new guys in that secondary as well too.
Yeah, and I would expect this team to be more aggressive and more blitzing. Not saying it's going to. I'm not guaranteeing a level of success, but I think the approach will be a more aggressive attacking unit than we saw maybe in past years under Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin. So that's my expectation for this defense is
Well,
based on.
it better be more successful because a 6.0,
Sure.
6.1 number isn't going to cut it
Yeah, I'm just not
this
guaranteeing the
year.
outcome. I'm
Yeah.
just saying what it's going to look like, I think, based on what we're hearing from this coaching staff and what we know about Graham and this veteran coaching staff in general.
What Witt once again? I was impressed to hear Witt talk a little bit more at length the last couple of days here.
Sticking with the defense, one young player who may not have an immediate role that's gained some buzz this spring, and it is the spring, and pads aren't on, all those caveats, but Dalen Everett, a cornerback we've not talked about probably as much as other draft selections. A lot of the beat guys have said he's stood out. I know that, I forget if it was Simmons or Joe Witt that talked about him, but talked about his poise. They were having him go one-on-one with DK Metcalf during the first week of OTAs last week, and Everett apparently held his own. And the coach was saying that he was able to really hold his technique and didn't try to play out of his, style and foundation. And that is obviously a real positive sign for a just turned 22-year-old rookie.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago during a podcast we talked about how he's all of a sudden kind of become the lost member, so to speak, especially
Hmm.
in the early top portion of this draft class. And a lot of focus is going to be on Drew Aller, obviously, with him being the quarterback position there. And you got the first round draft pick in Ianichor, and we've talked a lot about Dunker. He for whatever reason, it's partly because this is a 10-member draft class, I think, and because you do kind of hyper focus on he has sort of become kind of the lost member, but not to be forgotten. And it was good to hear the positive things that come out of the coaches' mouths. They made sure to talk about it. It's one of the things, in the few times that we've had conversations about Everett coming out of the draft and all like that, we talked about all the experience that he had during the time at Georgia and how he played a lot early on in his career and the number of games, and obviously playing at a high profile college such as Georgia, and the fact that he was able to play as much as he did at such a high profile college as at Georgia, I think speaks volumes about that. And obviously had success there. On top of it, with the national, being part of national championship runs, I think that I think you're just starting to see that kind of manifest early in the offseason here. Now he's probably not a guy that, at least barring injury and being a rookie status, that you're probably not going to see him on the field a lot as a rookie, barring the type injuries. But the fact that he is going to obviously be on this 53-man roster, he's going to have some sort of role, albeit probably predominantly special teams to start with. The fact that the experience that he has coming in college, and to hear these coaches talk about, he doesn't change his technique, even going up against a seasoned veteran like DK Metcalf. I think they got him on the right path so far.
Assuming Pittsburgh uses some level of dime defense, 6 defensive backs on the field this year, who do you think those 6 will be? And just assume good health out of the starting blocks, nobody's hurt. Who are the 6 DBs for those
Oh
dime
Lord.
situations?
I mean, it's obviously way early in this. I mean, you're gonna obviously have Ramsey out there. You would think you're gonna have Porter. You're gonna have Dean. So that's 3 right there.
Mhm.
Uh oh geez.
Elliott, Brisker?
Yeah. I mean, are you going to see both those guys on the field at the same time? I suppose it's plausible within that. I don't know. It's can you get Everett up to speed enough to where he would potentially have a role in that? I suppose. Yeah.
Maybe he's going to play some slot snaps, maybe, or Porter ends up playing inside if he's shadowing. But I think if you wanted kind of a rough estimate, and we will go into camp and see what happens, you have your outside corners, Porter and Dean, Ramsey, both safeties, Elliott and Brisker, and then maybe Eccles being that slot kind of overhang type player.
Mhm.
So I think that's a good looking group of 6 right there.
Yeah, we'll just obviously have a lot's going to happen during these next several weeks, and you just don't know about injuries and all. But in a perfect world, yeah, I think that potentially could be the 6. And how much of that will we see?
Saw 0 snaps at dime defense last year, which was really interesting. That was unusual for Pittsburgh's defenses, where they kept Queen and Wilson out there as much as possible in those passing situations. And so Pittsburgh could have a different look. Could you see more big nickel with the 3 safeties? That could be a real strategy this year, where Ramsey can play over slot if he needs to, and Brisker, even Elliott could as well. So I think Pittsburgh has some options there, and they're excited about that.
And look, you got 2 guys that can play in the box as well too, in Elliott and Brisker. So and that are also versatile enough that if you wanted to drop one of those guys out and go into a too high shell, you could do that as well too. So I think one of the key words, once again, to hyper focus on some of the things that were said by they talk about weaponizing a lot of these guys, and I'm excited to see that come to fruition.
Flipping over to the offense, Roman Wilson's gotten a lot of buzz and attention. Obviously, a really huge and critical 3rd season for him. Mike McCarthy singing his praises yesterday and really talking and lauding Roman Wilson for his work ethic and his approach, and asking immediately as soon as Mike McCarthy was hired, what can I do? How do I fit? What's the vision for me? And Wilson staying late after practice. He was talking to reporters saying that it's him, Max Hurlman, and Brandon Johnson staying late, getting extra reps in, catching passes on the jugs machine. And so Roman Wilson doing all he can to make his case for this new coaching staff.
Yeah, look, 3rd NFL season for him too, man, and a lot of questions about him, especially another year with Aaron Rodgers, and hoping to try to get more on the same page with Aaron Rodgers. You got a rookie draft pick in the 2nd round in Jeremy Bernard, going to obviously be pushing him as well too for early playing time. We got to see that jump, and we got to see that jump and be talking about it most of the summer as well too. He's going to have to stay healthy. He did talk about how kind of a blessing, so to speak, of being able to not being the main focus, I guess, of the cameras as he went through the injury in his rookie season. Got more perspective, and he's another one that I think really concerning himself with learning the why, and not why the position, but why you're doing certain things, and the importance of the spacing and the timing. And look, he's got a lot to prove right now. Former 3rd round draft pick, a guy that hasn't not only hasn't played a ton of snaps, hasn't contributed much as far as actual production on the field. So this is a big offseason for him.
Right. And even though Jeremy Bernard is the 2nd round draft pick, Pittsburgh moved up to acquire Roman Wilson, will still battle him, and Bernard has to earn that job. And Roman Wilson has more experience and a little more time with Aaron Rodgers, bumpy as last year was with Rodgers, and we'll just see how Wilson looks. But there's no question, there's never been a question about Roman Wilson's work ethic and desire to get better. There's not a real diva attitude to him, a chip on his shoulder perhaps, but not a diva. So this guy's going to work and put in the effort and give himself the best chance possible.
The thing I like best about his media session, what I've seen of it, was short, short to the point. He didn't allow himself to get hung by the tongue and just talk just to talk. So once again, he just needs to keep his head down and let the process be the process, and make sure he's getting on the same page with Aaron Rodgers throughout this offseason. And it did sound like right out of the chute that he went to McCarthy and said, "Look, what is my role? What do I need to do here?" And that's going to be his focus. I like the fact that he's one of the 3 players I think he talked about staying after practice with, who was it, Max Hurlman and Brandon Johnson, I think, was the other one, and
Yep.
those guys all try to get extra reps, I guess, on the jugs machine after practice and all. And hopefully, we're talking a lot about him as we get further into training camp and obviously the preseason.
He also cited his offseason work with the route god, who's a personal trainer who works with wide receivers, as really valuable for Wilson to learn about route running, which I wonder is an admission of maybe he didn't love the previous coaching staff and how they were teaching him. But I think new receivers coach Adam Henry excited to work with Roman Wilson.
One of the things that I keep going back to of doing the study on Roman Wilson when he was coming out of Michigan was his most of his production obviously came with free releases and out of the slot and kind of in motion guys. So I think that's his strength. We obviously haven't seen a lot of him in a Steelers uniform, specifically of trying to beat man or press type situations there. I mean, why not lean into the guy's strengths? And his strength obviously seemed to be more slot and free releases off the line. So you obviously went out and got Michael Pittman this offseason and DK Metcalf's second year in this team. Those are going to be your top two dogs there. But I can kind of see Roman Wilson, assuming he does make the team and progresses away, you hope that he will this offseason, of kind of being a interchangeable player, at least at the start of the season, maybe with a guy like Jeremy Bernard. Look, the thing he's most excited about, I think, he was asked about 11 personnel and what does he like best about the West Coast offense. He says throwing the football more. So I think more than anything, a continued takeaway from the time Mike McCarthy was hired up until now is we expect the ball to be thrown a little bit more.
I'm working on an article. It'll probably go up early next week that history is not on Roman Wilson's side for early round day 1, day 2 picks with his little and scant production 2 years in, but history is just that. It can be broken, and Wilson will have that chance this summer.
Look, is he ever going to be a 70, 60 reception guy in the NFL? Probably not.
But what's a good year for Roman in 26, assuming he makes the Steelers? We talked about Bernard's numbers. We put his over-under at like 35 receptions. What's a good expectation for Roman Wilson?
Man, I think if he could just hang right there potentially with Bernard and somewhere in the 20 to 30 reception range, I think that would be
I gave you 23 and a half. Would you take the over-under in terms of how many he will catch this year?
I would probably still take the under on that, but I mean, if he could top the 20 number, I think assuming everybody stays healthy and he plays a role that we think, assuming he does make the team that he could potentially play, I would even still be, if you put the number at 21.5, I think that would be an interesting number even to have to play with there. I in my head, I want to say that from my half glass full side of my brain would say I would want to see the over of, say, 20.5 or 21.5.
It's funny you mentioned that 20 number. I think will be relevant in the article I read about Roman Wilson and third-year expectations in history for some time next week. So we'll talk about maybe that more next week's podcast.
All right.
Let's go to Riley Nowakowski, the rookie, and I've had this thought. We talk about roster construction. Will Nowakowski be viewed as a number 3 tight end or a fullback? If he's going to be a potential number 3 tight end, is he working with those rooms at all? I wasn't sure what the thought was when they drafted Nowakowski. It was Ramon Chinyoung who came out and talked about him, signaling he may be treated like a running back in the running back room. But Ramon Chinyoung Sr. came out this week and said that Nowakowski spent more time with the tight ends than he has been the running backs. And so maybe that does open the door for him being that number 3 tight end if he's getting exposure to that room. And new tight ends coach Robert Kugler and working with those guys. Nowakowski talked about he's been used everywhere, including some stand-up slot role, which we had that one clip of showing him catching a pass in the slot in a warm-up installation period of practice last week. And so Nowakowski may be the Swiss. Well, I don't know if I call him the Swiss Army knife because Heidenreich's the Swiss Navy knife. I don't know if they both can be that, but a versatile chess piece all the same for Riley Nowakowski.
Yeah, this plays perfectly into my roster construction because I only had, I think I had this team in my 53-man prediction right out of the chute of Freiermuth, Washington, and Nowakowski. So that plays in perfectly. That perked my ears up to hear him being in that tight end room quite a bit. And look, this is a guy that you can obviously put in the backfield as a fullback. He just wants to get on the field, so he's going to do whatever it takes. I think in so many words, he said, "Yeah, I hope they do use a fullback more because that's going to give him an opportunity to get a few more snaps a game on top of it here." But look, a guy that's obviously going to be on the 53-man roster if healthy, a guy that you saw at Indiana the ability to move him around. This is a guy that you can attach to the end of the line of the scrimmage. You can put him out there. It sounds like, and we're not getting, I'm not expecting Nowakowski to play 500 snaps during his rookie season, but I mean, could you start in your head carving him out to maybe closer to, or at least over the 150 number? I think that's plausible here. I think you could put him out there in some two tight end situations where maybe it's Nowakowski in Washington or Nowakowski and Freiermuth, although you're probably, I mean, Washington obviously going to be out there in run type situations. The most interesting, and we saw him stand up and be in the slot some at Indiana. We know kind of the receiving chops that he has coming out of there as well too. We've seen enough reps of him, I think, at fullback at Indiana to get a good kind of initial grasp of what he can do there. Yeah, I think you said, I mean, I don't want to call him a Swiss Army knife or a Swiss Navy knife, but just a guy that is going to spend time in the tight end room and potentially even a little bit more than the running back room moving forward as well too. And look, another thing that they talked about is this is going to be a guy that's going to have to prove his worth on special teams. I have no doubt that he'll should be able to do that and be part of, I don't know, probably at least 2 units, maybe more than that when it comes to getting closer to a core type player. He comes off as a very smart player. Very here's the thing about this time of year: get to hear more about these guys post draft than the traditional. They've been in the system for a little bit now. They've been through practices and all. I think he was very impressive on camera a few days ago. Jeremy, what's there not to like about Jeremy Bernard, the person, as well too? A guy that's just willing to learn, not doesn't come off diva-ish at all. You just learn more about these players the more time they get in front of the camera moving forward here. So yeah, I think at least the way the things are trending right now, and you don't want to put a lot of context into off-season stuff at this point right now, but I very well could see this team keeping three, quote, whatever you want to, whatever room you want to put Nowakowski in, but I could see the three being Freiermuth, Washington, and Nowakowski, with Nowakowski being a tight end / fullback.
Yeah, I can see that coming into focus now. I see the light for those who were debating me before. I still wonder because I worry about an injury happening. Does that in-game limit your personnel groupings if you have just the two tight ends and Nowakowski? You can't run 22 personnel if somebody goes down unless you're going to use another offensive lineman. James Campen said they have not gotten to that stage of even thinking about those things yet, and so that remains to be seen. But back to Nowakowski, for the football purists out there, they'll love to hear what Mike McCarthy said. He says his offenses love to have a fullback. Back in his Green Bay days, he kept upwards of 3 fullbacks on the roster. Don't expect that to happen in 2026 in Pittsburgh, but the point being, McCarthy and West Coast roots certainly has a fullback. John Kuhn in Green Bay, Hunter Lipke in Dallas. Certainly Nowakowski could have a similar role and function in Pittsburgh.
One of the biggest things I look forward to as we slowly creep through the rest of the summer here, and then obviously get into preseason play. I want to watch. Hopefully, they put Nowakowski in the situations where he's attached to the line of scrimmage, because I really want to focus in on a guy of his stature and all, being able to at least function. right at or right above the line as a blocker on the inner line of scrimmage, because that's something that he's going to have to be able to do at some point. Specifically, if you were to have an injury to a guy like Darnell Washington, how can Nowakowski function as a run blocker on the inner line of scrimmage? That's one of the biggest questions when you talk about tight ends / fullbacks who are have the size and the build. Obviously, one of the limitations Connor Hayward had during his time in Pittsburgh. He wasn't great in the line. I think one of the things, and it was an area that where Connor Hayward got better towards the end of his final season or so, was his ability on the split flow zone to come across and at least be able to get a piece of a guy. Can we see Nowakowski be a better version of that? Plus, be a little bit better end of the line blocker than say a Connor Hayward was when he had his hand in the dirt.
And like Hayward, as you said, a multifaceted special teamer. This is probably a four-phase guy. I would expect him. That's basically what he was at Indiana, if memory serves. And given his decent athleticism and linebacker background, this guy can be on kick return, kick coverage, punt rush, and punt return or punt coverage team. So probably four phases for Nowakowski, which McCarthy admitted in today's day and age, fullbacks can't be just fullbacks. It can't just be the lead blocker and nothing else. So there'll be a special teams component to it, but Nowakowski has that background, and that should be nothing new to him in Pittsburgh.
How close can you get him to being, and look, he's only been around the league, last year was his rookie season. How close can you get this guy to maybe a Harold Fanning Jr.?
That's are you saying in terms of usage, or because they're a little different, I think, but I kind of get where your head is at.
I mean, and look, I don't expect Harold Fanning Jr., at least in his, they really lean into him quite a bit there. But I mean, can you kind of, you see kind of the comparison there where look, he's never going to be a 500, 600 play guy during the season, but can you get kind of the same kind of skill set towards a Fannin Jr. who is a little bit undersized?
Yeah, I mean, I get your overall point, but obviously we're not going to see the focus on Nowakowski the way that Cleveland or Bowling Green focused on Fan. And I think a souped up Connor Hayward is a fair comparison. I think something like Lipke is also probably fair to think about in terms of usage and production. In 2024, Lipke's second season, he caught 12 passes for 111 yards, had 5 first downs, 12 carries for 38 yards. Nowakowski might not reach the 12 carries, but I think 12 receptions for 111 yards sounds like a reasonable number out of the gate for Nowakowski.
I mean, pull up the comparables of the measurables of Fannin and Nowakowski.
Sure. I believe Fannon's a little bit bigger, but he was that H-back type that, was not the prototypical tight end coming out of college. Fannin went 6'3", 241, 32 and a quarter inch arms, and Nowakowski, I think, was about an inch shorter. Let me pull up his exacts whenever he weighed in. Nowakowski, 6'2", 250, 31 and a half inch arms.
All right, so a little bit heavier and an inch shorter. All right.
And shorter arms, too, by 3/4 of an inch, but not too far off from... Yeah, in terms of the size, I can see it. I wouldn't expect them to be used in quite the same way.
No. What I'm saying is just get how close can he become to becoming with at least the skill set that Fannin has.
How would you define that? Just because I want to make sure we're on the same page. When you're saying the skill set
kind of a multifunctional type of guy, a guy that you can split out and utilize occasionally in the passing game, a guy that you can attach to the line of scrimmage and get some blocking out of, and a guy that you can occasionally obviously put in the backfield. I have to go back, and I don't know if Harold Fanning Jr. was used a lot in that role as a rookie there, but he's the kind of guy that the closer you can get into becoming a Harold Fanning Jr., I think the better. And no, I'm not going to say that he'll ever become a Harold Fanning Jr., but when you have that kind of build, you're going to have to be a multifunctional player, because you're just not going to be a hand in the dirt, into the line of scrimmage type of guy in the NFL at his size.
There's been some David Johnson sort of vibes and comparisons between Nowakowski and to Nowakowski, I should say. Johnson probably a little less versatile and less backfield. Now, I mean, he was used as a fullback, some little stockier kind of a guy. But no matter how you want to compare it, I think we all understand Nowakowski's going to wear multiple hats for this offense, and we're excited to see exactly how he'll be used.
Do you think you can get him to 150? Do you think you can get him on the field for 150 snaps? Is
Uh,
that pushing it a little bit?
I hadn't thought about snap count too much. I mean, obviously, injuries can dictate things. That's how many per game?
Yeah.
150 for 17 games, 8.8, so just under 9. Yeah, I think 125. I think Connor played 174 his rookie year. I forget if there were injuries that were impacting things. So, yeah, 125, 150, some rough math. That sounds right.
All right. Obviously in the game situations will probably dictate that a little bit more. If you're
Mhm.
playing with the lead, maybe get them on the field a little bit more later in games. Obviously, if you're behind, you're probably not. So, but yeah, I think that's a good kind of target, 125 to 150 snaps for him as a rookie.
All right, Dave, anything else from players, coaches? Patrick Queen spoke. He was not at OTAs last week, but he did return this week. Remember, these are all voluntary, so it's not mandated he be there, but obviously the more work he gets in with his new coaching staff, the better. He did address the trade rumors that popped up in March with Dallas reportedly having a lot of interest in trying to acquire Patrick Queen. That did not happen. Queen said he recognized the charade of that, where it was his word for it, so that's how he felt about it. He also noted there were some brief contract talks with the Steelers about a possible extension, nothing crazy. Queen's words, and we don't expect an extension to occur. Queen said his focus is on playing good ball, helping the team win in 2026.
He would like to go to Lake Erie to go fishing, and not so much in, I guess, the Mon. Overall, that was one takeaway. He's obviously a big fisherman. Not that that has to do anything with football, but that caught my eye there. I imagine he read quite a few articles this offseason on Steelers Depot about the whole trade stuff, and I dedicated an article or two on the plausibility and probability of that ultimately happening. And then a lot of that came off of those Dallas Cowboy beat writers, uh, kind of thinking that maybe Dallas could potentially trade for Patrick Queen. Obviously, that didn't materialize. And then once Patrick Queen got past the roster bonus date, it made it a lot less likely that he was going to be traded for. I know a lot of people are still wondering maybe if Patrick Queen could potentially be a trade piece later in the offseason. I think we're well away from that plausibility, probability aspect of it right now. Needless to say, he saw all that talk. This is a guy that I don't, even though he claims that there have been some conversations about extension talks. I don't expect that to materialize, especially when you look at how much cash this team is on. It looks like they're projected to spend this year as it is, and we haven't even got to the Joey Porter Jr. extension yet. There's other guys with their hands out. Darnell Washington. We've talked about Herbig, Benton. It just doesn't seem very, very likely, and hasn't seemed very likely that Patrick Queen will sign an extension this offseason. We talked a couple of shows ago. I think one of our female listeners said, at least address his market value. So we've done that. It probably wouldn't take a lot to get the deal done. It's just a matter of, do the Steelers want to get a deal done, and would Queen want to get a deal done at kind of the number that the Steelers might have pegged for him. I just this is a big season for Patrick Queen. The good news for Patrick Queen is he's still fairly young. He has a potential of if he has his best season as a pro yet, he stands to make a lot of money next offseason as an unrestricted free agent. But he's got to get through this season. We've got to see a better version, or the best version that we've seen of Patrick Queen to date in 2026, if this defense is going to perform at the level everybody hopes that it performs at.
Agreed. Probably best for all parties to let the season play out and revisit things in the off season. But Queen showing up, and we'll see if something new can be unlocked by this coaching staff. The same can be said for Peyton Wilson, who the coaching staff certainly seems to be high on so far. So big year for both of those guys, Queen and Peyton Wilson.
Uh-huh.
Let's stick with the defense, Dave, and some defensive line potential shuffling here. I thought there was some interesting commentary and something to watch for in training camp throughout the year. Domata Peko, the new defensive line coach, was talking about Keanu Benton, his versatility, and that he said he plays some nose tackle this year, but also has some versatility to play defensive end and play up and down the line. And some insinuations that maybe Y.A. Black will continue working at nose tackle where he left off last year. So could there be a thought that Black ends up playing and kind of eating into those nose tackle snaps? Benton plays more defensive tackle, defensive end. That's something I think we should be watching for this preseason and regular season.
Yeah, talked about how his quickness and his ability to move laterally and his athleticism that he has. We've obviously had the luxury of digesting a lot of Keanu Benton film up until this point. I was glad to see him get kind of those sack numbers up a little bit last season. It will be with when you look at how much maybe sub package this team's going to play. You're obviously going to have Cameron Hayward on the field a lot. Derek Harmon in his second season. You know, assuming he stays healthy, you expect to see him on the field quite a bit. We'll see how much true 3-down fronts this team ends up playing, specifically on early downs. Could you wind up seeing a little bit more Y.A. Black in there over the nose? I think there's a possibility of that happening. That would obviously eat into a few of Keanu Benton snaps, but it's not like you're going to see Derek Harmon and Cameron Hayward play 100% of the snaps in every game. So Benton better be able to have that versatility to play more than just over the nose moving forward. He has to some degree shown that overall. And then, you know, you're going to have, you got the addition of Sebastian Joseph Day, who Peko talked a lot about, that has the versatility to play up and down the line, including some nose on top of it. What's the rest of the depth chart of the defensive line end up shaking out because of maybe the versatility of this group? Is there a slight possibility that this team only keeps 6? You know, depending on how they try to carve out this final 53-man roster, because they view it versatile. I thought it was interesting that Mike McCarthy said not only is this kind of the biggest, I would guess he meant in length of guys overall.
Yeah, I think size, overall profile
of a defensive line that he's ever had, but also the deepest as well too. So how much is that lip service? You know, what will that mean to the final numbers? Look, Keanu Benton's going to be part of this team in 2026. I just do kind of wonder if the comments made by Peko about Black and the nose and the versatility of Benton, and you know, you're not gonna take Harmon off the field a lot if you can help it. You're not gonna take Hayward off the field a lot if you can help it. What does that mean overall for maybe the playing time for Benton?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to paint necessarily as a negative, like they were saying anything critical of Benton. They just might be recognizing some basic facts that Black is a mountain of a man who profiles best as a nose tackle, and Benton has some quickness and some length and some size. He played defensive end early in his Wisconsin career that might make him more useful. Maybe he's not the guy with a great anchor in the middle, which is true on tape. And so we'll see. But I think Pittsburgh might be trying to change some roles and try some different things. I think Benton, obviously, there's a case to be made to push him to 3-tech and defensive end. A little worried about, can he kind of get through those gaps? Because I think he did well one-on-one against centers last year, kind of getting through that A gap. But, you know, I think Pittsburgh can toy around with the idea. And even though Pittsburgh did have this eye towards Black as a defensive end last year, he was playing nose tackle. He was playing both defensive end and playing nose tackle late last season. Once Daniel McCarthy went down with his torn ACL midseason, there was no real backup nose tackle. They tried Broderick Martin Rhodes for a brief minute. That Buffalo game, that was a disaster. Black ended up being the backup nose tackle, rotating in behind Benton last year. So this would kind of be in part a continuation maybe of his role last year, but maybe an emphasis on really highlighting him at nose tackle when you have Harmon and Joseph Day. Some of the rookie guys can show at defensive end, whether that's a Rubio or Jabody or somebody, then it may also incentivize his team to continue playing Black at nose tackle.
All right, 746 defensive snaps for Keanu Benton in 2025. Obviously, a career high for him. It was an increase over from 641 in 2024. In an ideal world where everybody stays healthy on this defensive line unit, Benton probably going to struggle to see 750 snaps this season. Would you say?
Sure, you would expect that number to come down. Part of the number was because Harmon missed 5 games last year, and so that's one reason why Benton saw so much time. But obviously, I think even if everybody's healthy, this guy's going to play a lot, especially if they were to pay him. Then obviously going to play a ton. But I think something in the 600, 650 snap range sounds about right for Benton.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Something more in tune or in line with 2024 when he played 641 during the regular season.
All right, Dave, anything else from players, coaches that perked up your attention?
Oh Lord, we could probably go another 3 hours here.
And we might, depending on our shows.
What about the Warren Dowdle Chin Young on running back rotation and usage and everything related to that?
Yeah, he said all the things that you would expect, an even split, both guys getting, quote, ample playing time. So I take that with a grain of salt. We'll see exactly how it looks whenever the Bullets are live come the fall. Both are going to play, but will they ride the hot hand one week? It just, we'll see. I think this time of year, you kind of say it's an even split. You're not going to sit there and say this guy's going to play more than the other. I thought what was notable, though, from Jalen Warren, he's dropped some weight. He says he's down to 208 pounds. I don't know exactly what he was at previously. The team website lists him at 215, but those are always unreliable. But he's dropped some weight. He said an effort to get more explosive, to feel better, add some more good muscle. And so Pittsburgh's searching for more explosive plays. Warren, a different look, might provide them this year.
All right, Heidenreich, obviously spending time in the running back room. I don't know if that means that he isn't spending a lot of time in the wide receiver room in addition, but he's definitely getting work in the running back room.
Yeah, which makes sense. I think his skill set is still more similar to a running back than it is a wide receiver. They're still going to lean on his versatility, no question about that. But that makes the most amount of sense for a starting point for Heidenreich.
All right, we got to hear from James Camp. Any other takeaways about? I'm with you on the running back. We're just going to have to wait and see how this plays out. Game circumstances, health, obviously. It's hard to. They're saying all the right things to appease both players. They're going to play equal amount, but we'll just have to see how that ends up tilting as we get further. Obviously once the season starts there. So I don't know if there's too much more discussion to talk about moving forward there. James Campen talked. Always, it was good to hear from him. Was excited to hear about from him as well too. Talking about how kind of natural Fautano just went back to over to the left side and just got into his sets that way, like I guess like riding a bike, so to speak. He did make sure to point out there, there's people trying to hyper focus on this and all and try to put everybody in one box, saying, well, everybody at their core is a very flexible right, left, natural position, doesn't matter. But James Campen brought up the old argument, and it was kind of like Flozo Adams several years ago. I'll never forget some of the things that he said when he came to Pittsburgh after being primarily a left tackle during his time in Dallas, and come over to Pittsburgh, play right, and Campen in so many words said, imagine being right-handed and being asked to write with your left hand all of a sudden. Some players can do it. Some players can't. I mean, it's
that simple. Everyone tries to make it like
simple,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, everyone tries to say, oh, it's a myth, or some will say
Right.
it's crazy to move these guys. It is such, and we've talked about this. It's a case by case basis. It depends on the player, their background, their comfort level. It is not black and white.
I know some other sites are trying to focus on that and big brain this and all, but some guys can do it, some guys can't. And some of the guys that you think should be able to do it can't do it. And some of the people that you think, man, this guy played. I mean, look at Mason McCormick. I think that's a good example. And he talked about all the thousands of snaps that Mason McCormick played on the left side coming out of college there. And Mason McCormick really kind of easily translated over to that right guard spot first couple of seasons here. Then you look back at a guy like Kevin Dotson, man, and a guy that predominantly played right guard in college, and you get him into Pittsburgh, and you moving him back and forth, and he never looked comfortable over at the left guard spot there. And you see him now that he's left Pittsburgh and gone over to the Rams and back to a natural position, what that's meant to him in his career. So I you can't put these guys in boxes, and I think that's part two why you're seeing a lot of now. Look, do things seem to be heading towards obviously Fautano at left tackle and Mason McCormick at left guard? I think the short answer is to that right now is yes, but they want to be able to know who can do what and who's more comfortable on what side. That's a lot of what this process is at this point of the offseason. Right now, some of these guys can do it, some of these guys can't, and it really should be turned moving forward when we're talking about guys coming out of college and specifically, and we look at just these right-sided guys. I mean, we you know, Ihanichor is going to be a good test of that as well too. Can he seamlessly at some point, you know, play on the left side? We don't know until we see it here. But I think one of the main takeaways, and when you have an experienced line coach like Campen saying that basically some guys can write with their left hand, although they're right-handed, some guys can't. That's a takeaway there.
The good news is, I think Campen mentioned this too, is you move these guys early now in the spring to find out as soon as possible and give these guys as much of a runway as possible to adjust, as opposed to, I think Campen cited, you don't do this midway through training camp where you sit there and say, oh my goodness, we're down, somebody gets hurt, we got to move somebody who can make this thing work. And so you do it early, you do it, you're aggressive about it early on in the spring process to really get everyone that chance to evaluate when we're not really worried about making it perfect right now, and football's not right around the corner in terms of the regular season. So at least in that respect, Pittsburgh's had the right approach.
Yeah, what does this mean for Dunker? Maybe Dunker can't be a left guard. We don't know, even though he played a little bit of left guard early on in his career at Iowa, and obviously predominantly played right tackle throughout his college career. Is it easier to go from right tackle to right guard, or does it even matter? Can a guy like him with his athleticism and smartness and toughness, can he play either guard position? We don't know really at this point.
Yeah, and typically I think it's more difficult when you flip sides because you're in a different stance. You're in a right-hand stance compared to a left-hand stance. Your steps are different. Everything is mirrored and flipped. When it's right tackle to right guard, you're in the same stance. Your footwork is generally the same. So I think it's less of a learning curve there. But as we talked about, it's different for each guy. The comfort level, how quickly guys pick up on it, different. The coach matters too. And I think Pittsburgh has some good coaching to help that transition. Obviously, when you have Fautanu and McCormick, guys who have played those spots in college extensively, that really helps and in many ways puts them back in their home positions. But Fautanu and McCormick seem like two guys who aren't bothered or faced by anything, and I think Pittsburgh liked the idea. And they said this wasn't the main motivation, but sort of a byproduct to keep all those guys on the same side and kind of together with Frazier, McCormick, and Fautanu, and so that also is a benefit.
The good news about Anderson is he was a multi-position player coming out of Maryland, so he had that going, and so thus far in the NFL, we've seen him play both right and left guard, and really Hoffman as well too. I think that's a plus when you get two backup quality players overall that we at least have enough tape on seeing them playing both sides.
And Anderson apparently prefers to play right guard, so that all kind of works out. Dylan Cooks played left and right tackle. He's been a swing guy, and so there is a lot of background and versatility for these offensive linemen.
Look, Campen's got a great group of clay, essentially, still in that offensive line group. That's why I say I think I said a couple of shows ago, when you got a guy like Campen and the products that he's had specifically during his time with Green Bay and the amount of draft, and Campen I think mentioned this as well too, the draft pedigree that obviously the Steelers have invested in. This is a good group to have to work with. I mean, you got a guy like Driscoll is the most, what is he, 7th year or something that Campen said. I mean, Driscoll technically is I guess, the old man in the room at this point, right?
And how old is he? He's not that old. He is 29.
Right. So, look, I'm really interested to see how this offensive line progresses from here on out, specifically under Campen. You hear guys like Zach Frazier talk about introducing more drills into this thing, which is not a bad idea. He's not trying to reinvent the wheel on top of it. He's just trying to refine and make these guys better. This is a good group to try to work with moving forward. If this team's going to have success on offense in 2026 right out of shoot, the offensive line is obviously going to have to play a huge role in that. I do almost kind of I find myself too when getting into the 53-man roster construction. There's still a part of me that kind of wonders if we might see 8 in total because of them getting a hard look at the position flexibility and all of this group. Might we see the initial 53-man roster have just 8 offensive line in it?
Potentially, and we talked about this, depends on Broderick Jones' health, and we got a little more footage of him this week that he was in helmet, he was hitting the blocking sled on some combination block drills, and so does not appear he's been cleared and working in team. Would not expect that until training camp at the earliest, but the fact that he's got a helmet on and is doing something, contact related is a positive sign for him.
Absolutely, and we'll just continue. The big line in the sand with him is the start of training camp, whether or not he starts on PUP or not. I think with him.
Based on the video, and I know that obviously he's still away from full clearance, there's no timetable on that. It's hard to see him start on active PUP for a guy who's in a helmet, hitting a sled, and then you project another 2 months out in terms of rehab, recovery, getting further away from the injury and the surgery. Just hard to think they're going to put that guy on reserve PUP or active PUP.
All right, I was never a medical school prospect, much to my parents' chagrin. So
no Doogie Howser over here.
yeah,
no Dave Howser.
I mean, I'm good at diagnosing groin situations, and I can 9 times out of 10 tell you probably if it was an Achilles injury that a guy suffered by his reaction.
Those are the worst injuries. When you see an Achilles pop, man, that is like the worst. That and knee injuries are just terrible.
Yeah, I'll leave that to the training staff. But I mean, it's a line in the sand where it comes to Broderick Jones, and until we get to the start of training camp, not much speculation from me on that.
And as you mentioned, and I don't want to overlook this, with Campen, similar to our Wednesday discussion about Danny Crossman and Chris Boswell, Campen said he's not trying to totally remap these guys. Because this offensive line has some level of moldable clay, especially the rookies, but there's some guys who are starting to establish themselves and really are ascending, and Frazier, McCormick, Fautanu, and so Campen's not trying to come in and change everything, which could really have some negative impacts on guys' unintended consequences. So good coaches know when to coach and when to back off and let a guy that's playing well do his thing.
I think the main takeaway that I have up until this point is kind of consistent in the fact that I think, and that's dangerous to say at times, but I think wherever Fautanu and McCormick end up, they'll end up on the same side together.
Yeah, that sounds right, and they'll likely, I think, be on the left side. All right, Dave, anything else? I'm trying to run through my head of all the players who spoke. Pat Frymuth spoke. I don't think there was a whole lot. They're excited for more opportunities in the offense this year. Anything else from players, coaches?
I guess people probably wonder why ain't you guys talking about the quarterback position more, specifically Howard and Aller. I think Art did a good job talking about it and the importance of the quarterback school and how even his tape from going through the quarterback school was I think has been shown at some point here. But I think Art probably put it best. You're going to learn more about these guys when you get into training camp and the preseason there. So you got 2 young quarterbacks, obviously in slightly different phases of development. Howard didn't play at all last season, but he still got the years or limited amount of time of being in NFL systems. Art talked about how smart he is. We're just going to have to see how this thing plays out at some point. I thought Jeremy Fowler, I think, wrote this morning that he thinks that Howard has the leg up on the backup spot, but all that's to be determined. And we're gonna have to wait to see how these guys perform in training camp and preseason type settings when it comes to the younger quarterbacks.
Right. I've left this thing open-ended to be determined. Plenty of information that will shape our and the team's opinion. But I think Howard will be given every chance to be the number two. And if he plays reasonably well, then he'll be the number two. And if not, then the conversation becomes where does the team go from there? But there's confidence that Howard can step in and be one snap away. Then the three will be, I think, Rodgers, Howard, and Aller to begin the year.
All right. That's the way I'm leaning right now. I think Mason ends up being the odd man out, but this thing, like I always say, these things have a funny way of working themselves out. But in a perfect, healthy world right now, that's the way in my head that I have it going with the three, and maybe they could potentially trade Rudolph off for something.
Right. We talked about that a little bit. Tampa Bay makes sense. Some have floated the Jets as a possibility as well. All right, Dave. There's a good, I think, week number 2 of OTAs. McCarthy seems happy. Coaches seem happy. Team seems healthy. Knock on wood. And so, all good news for this time of year.
And it should be this time of year, right? Like I stated at the top of the podcast. I mean, you get more excited the deeper that you get into this. I think your traditional fandom is on full display this time of year, especially once you get to hear from all these coaches, and then with this being a new coaching staff and hearing more from these coaches. I think they really have assembled a strong coaching staff. I'm excited to see which way what this means as far as the first year with Mike McCarthy and all, and obviously going to be a roster that has a lot of youth and new players on it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to sum it up. So we'll keep watching mandatory minicamp, and then they'll have a couple of voluntary sessions after mandatory minicamp, which is a little different wrinkle under Mike McCarthy. I think Mark Cabali was intimating that, assuming McCarthy's pleased by the work this upcoming week for the mandatory minicamp, that the veterans will basically get to go home, not have to. They don't have to either way, but basically the team will say, all the vet guys, don't even worry about showing up for the last week of voluntary sessions. We're going to use that for the young guys to get extra work in before training camp. We'll see exactly how it all shakes out, but that might be the idea.
All right, what are they supposed to do today? And are players talking today, or is it just the practice session? Do we know what's ahead of us today on the media calendar?
I don't think there was anything on the media calendar. I can check here. No, I'm wrong about that. There is practice. There's nothing that says about players being available or anything like that. So we might not hear much. I don't know. Maybe they'll grab a player or two off the field, but nothing on the media side in terms of their press release.
All right, Eagle Eye Kozora, you were the first out there as usual to notice the Steelers making a few front office promotions and moves.
Yes, this is going to be super nerdy time with Alex, even more than usual. So just fair warning, skip ahead if you don't want to hear about the intricacies of the Steelers front office, although you'll hear about Dave and the salary cap here in a second. So we're both going to nerd out in our own little areas of great joy. So Pittsburgh, not anything major in terms of their front office reshuffling. There's not been any new hires, at least none posted to the team site, but there have been a couple of promotions and a couple of people who have departed. So the new titles or promotions, whatever you want to call them, Cole Marcoux is now the Senior Director of Football Strategy and Administration, Sheldon White, the Senior Personnel Executive, Kelvin Fisher, Senior National Scout, Max Gruder, Director of Pro Personnel, Anthony Rooney, Scouting Assistant. So the big takeaways here is it sounds like promotions for Gruder and Marcoux. Marcoux was previously just the Director of Football Administration. He had taken over essentially Omar Khan's role as the quote-unquote cap contract guy whenever Khan became GM in 2022, being the point man for those things. So this seems like just kind of a shift and tweak in title, but probably reflects the good job they think Marcoux is doing, probably a little pay raise as well. And then Gruder sounds like he's going to be running the pro side of the scouting department. So with the scouting department, there's the college side and the pro side. Sheldon White was previously called the Director of Pro Scouting. He's now the Senior Personnel Executive. Gruder went from assistant director of player scouting to director of pro personnel. And so there might be a promotion for Gruder. He's been with the team since 2024. Fisher's been a longtime scout. Rooney, he was an intern. They kind of shed the intern label. Also, Tim Gribble has an official role. He was hired in January. We didn't know exactly what he would be called. He is now the Senior Director of College Personnel. He's from, when was it in Washington previously. He's a Pittsburgh native. Area scout Chris Watts, officially gone, although we already knew that. And Keaton Hunt, who was a scouting intern, apparently no longer with the team. His name has been removed from the team website.
All right. There's not going to be a test associated with this, right?
Maybe there is. I meant to ask you before the podcast, so we'll do it now. We'll do it live, as they say. Are you in for Steelers Depot Jeopardy? I just worked on the new set of questions. So you want to play this year? You're a returning champ, Dave.
Oh, I don't know. Do you need me? I guess.
We want you.
Do you need me and my greatness?
Okay, maybe we don't want you.
You know, we've been doing more at night now, thanks to YouTube TV. I record every Jeopardy. When you get older, and look, I have been the first to notice this myself. I'm losing some of my. I think I'm losing some of my long-term memory, even when it comes to the Steelers stuff now at this point. So I'm trying to keep my mind as sharp as possible. And old people and Jeopardy just seem to go together. So when we're laying in bed at night, the first thing that we do as before I get into my staring at the ceiling stage of my nightly process is we play the Jeopardy and see how many we can get right. I do pretty good on it overall, and my wife surprisingly is pretty good at that as well too. I shouldn't say surprisingly.
Yeah, Tiff might hear you.
She's pretty good at it as well too. So that's I'll if you're asking me, if you need me, I'll do it.
All right. Well, we would love to have you. I don't know which episode we'll have you on for, but I just made the first set of questions and don't know when we'll record. I had no idea all the details, but I think people enjoyed that last year, and I'm ready to try to stump you guys, especially you, Dave. You and
I
colleges.
know. No,
You
I
and
don't
the
want to.
colleges.
I don't want to play if because you go into these whole defining of the questions of what Dave won't know, and that's unfair. I think, especially
No.
in my declining cognitive years here.
Okay, you act like you're 85 years old. Anyway, back to the Steelers. The front office reshuffling, just a couple points there. Nothing too crazy, nothing that'll impact what fans will see too much, but just love noting that stuff. This is the time of year where front offices across the league are updating their personnel, hiring scouts departing, shifts in titles. Again, no known hires for Pittsburgh, so the scouting department generally intact, although Watts is gone. And then Keaton Hunt is gone. Typically in August, there might be some more hires to get updated. We'll let you know about that, but that is the latest on the front office.
All right, let me give you a quick salary cap update here. And this is everything except for the Dean Lowry salary, which we think is a veteran benefit contract with no signing bonus. But until that hits, we don't know for sure. But pending the financials of that, and this takes into the account the Boswell contract, the Aaron Rodgers contract, all the undrafted free agent signing bonuses, and I won't even get you started because we'll use up another 20 minutes of time talking about undrafted free agents and signing bonuses. By the way, it's $112,000 in total in undrafted free agent signing bonuses, and I believe that's bottom in the NFL. As far as that goes, show me your shock face, Alex, when it comes to that. But taking everything into account, obviously, except for the Dean Lowry financials, this team currently sits in real time exactly $7,303,764 under the cap right now. So a hair over 7.3 million under the cap. Now, do keep in mind that you got the forthcoming salary cap expenses as things progress, things like the workout bonus charge for the offseason. You still got to get Drew Aller under contract. There's going to be an offset of around 216,000 in salary cap space for that. You've got the end of the rule of 51, which is adding 2 more players to the roster, about 1.7 million. Got a full practice squad. It's going to probably total out over 4.5 million. You've got one player on injured reserve right now. There's probably going to be more come the start of the season. How will that impact? You're going to have injury settlements more than likely throughout the rest of the offseason that might total around 200,000. And then you've got the unknown in-season injury replacement fund / buffer that I have estimated at being 7 million. That could come in at 5 million. That could come in at 13 million. Omar Khan will not give me that information. So in other words, you've still got some meat on the bone here, specifically when you think about that what's going to happen with Joey Porter Jr., how much will his cap charge rise as a extension, what's going to happen with Darnell Washington, Herbig, Benton, will any of those contracts change? You do have the ability to obviously restructure another contract or two with DK Metcalf, TJ Watt, and Alex Highsmith being candidates for that, should you need that to happen. And what's going to happen? Who is in the rule of 51 right now that ends up not being on the roster come week 1? You obviously have some matriculation go on over there. What's going to happen with Malik Harrison with that 4.75 million salary? What's going to happen with Mason Rudolph? So there's a lot of things to work out right now. So the main takeaway everybody should concentrate on: this team has $7.3 million in salary cap space right now. That's short term, plenty of room to work with, even probably for a Joey Porter Jr. and Darnell Washington extension. But as we get deeper into the offseason and closer to the start of the regular season, we'll get a better idea of how much we might see in a restructure, not a restructure if indeed one is needed.
All right, so great information. I know you have the posts up on the site that detail all of that for you guys to keep handy, so appreciate you keeping us up to date on the latest. And you said your numbers match the NFLPA, correct? And so
to the penny. So if you think mine's wrong, you better have a good argument.
There you go. So I know other sites may have other information out there, but you're matching the exact number that is shown by the NFL PA, and that means that your number is correct.
If I'm sleeping well at night when it comes to that number, everybody listening should trust my number.
And it means I'm sleeping well too if you're sleeping well, because I'll hear about it whenever you're those numbers are not in alignment. All right, Dave. One other piece, just minor note here: the NFL informed 2 teams still have a change in the roster cut-down date. It's now going to be Sunday, August 30th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Usually it's the Tuesday after the last slate of preseason games, and so they're going to bump that up. Why that is, I'm not quite sure. So it's usually Tuesday at 4 p.m. Now it's Sunday at 6 p.m., so a little change in terms of when all teams, including Pittsburgh, have to trim from 90 to their initial 53-man roster.
All right. When does my final normally come out? Like the Monday, I think, after the, I don't know, but I guess what you're telling me is my final roster prediction better be done not too long after the final preseason game ends, right?
Dave, we just got some news coming in from Adam Schefter. I'll read the tweet verbatim. Pittsburgh Steelers and senior special teams coach Darius Swinton have parted ways due to a violation of club policy, per league sources. So Swinton was hired as Danny Crossman's assistant this year. Previously with the Raiders, he's bounced around a couple places. Violation of club policy. Don't know exactly what that means. Something, though, significant obviously happened for the team to part ways with Darius Swinton.
All right. Didn't see that one coming or have that on my, who was the old out? Was it Al Everest?
Was let go right before 1 year.
See, my long-term memory ain't all that bad.
You still got it, old man.
But hopefully it was nothing along those lines. I don't even, I'm trying to even remember what that was even about. Was that about emails or something like that?
No, that was something else. That was pretty scandalous. Let's not go down that road.
Okay. All right, so Darius Swinton is out. So that's interesting news on this Friday morning here.
All right, Dave, anything else to talk about? Feel free. If not, we can get us some reader listener emails and close out today's show.
All right, we'll save this, I guess, for Monday here. 4 stats the Pittsburgh Steelers offense must change in 2026. I don't want to rush through this. I want to spend time on it, much like we did with the defensive stats here. But I do want to go back real quick before we get into some emails here. I had asked you to drill down a little bit deeper in those third down stats that you did, and I had a feeling there was a reason why I asked that, and I think it came out. What was the significant changes? I had asked you to look at, I think, from to divvy up short yardage and kind of short to medium yardage, and there ended up being a little bit of a lopsidedness in there, right?
Yeah, Pittsburgh's third down defense overall ranked 25th last year, but that needs context as well. And so from 1 to 3 yards, short yardage, Pittsburgh third best third down defense, 4 to 6 yards, intermediate, 32nd, dead last, and 7 plus those and long situations, 18th. And so I know that we talked about third and long being the pain point last year, and it was not good enough, but the third and intermediate was the worst part for Pittsburgh, being worse than any other team in football last year.
Right. And I felt like this team was pretty good overall in short yardage, and obviously that bears itself out, those numbers there. But we talked a lot about third downs when we went over those stats there. But you combine the third and medium problems along with the third and long type situations. What were they? What'd you say? 18th? What was the third and long?
Third and long, 18th and 7 plus
All right.
yards. Yes.
Yes, this team needs to be better on third and 4 longer moving
Yep.
into 2026. That's the main takeaway there.
All right, Dave. Anything else to get to? If not, we can get to some emails.
All right, feels like we could have gone another 2 hours here, but we'll save a lot of it here for some of it for Monday here. Let's go to the email machine and go to, who do we have here? McCormick underappreciated. We talked a little bit about that on the show the other day. Mark in NorCal, a longtime listener, over 10 years probably here in Northern California or the state of Jefferson, LOL. I don't see how McCormick is underappreciated, and I would bet that in a survey of fans, he is not only well liked, but well appreciated, he said. So he takes a little bit of
Umbrage
there with McCormick being underappreciated, and thinks that a survey of fans would say not only well liked but well appreciated.
Yeah, I think the point was not about is he liked or not, but how much credit does he get for the good play that he's put out there. And I don't think it's a ton. I think the focus has been on Frazier and Fautanu, and others, linemen in general, don't always get the credit that is deserved. So yeah, I still think it's fair to call him underappreciated. Doesn't mean he was disliked or people hated him. They just didn't talk about him too much.
All right, I would agree with you as well too, but we appreciate discerning viewpoints. And Mark is a longtime listener out there in Northern California. Thanks for listening, Mark. James Sussinelli writes in about the CNN Sports Tonight play of the day. I was talking about that the other day. He says, Dave, I loved your trip down memory lane talking about Fred Hickman, Nick Charles, and CNN Sports Tonight. I met them in New York City one time, he says, but you forgot to mention the big thing about CNN Sports Tonight, the play of the day. Before the internet, they would show one great play each night near the end of the show, so you had to watch the whole thing. It was so great back in the day. Yeah, I forgot to mention that as well too, and a lot of people probably don't know. I think Nick Charles passed away years ago, and I don't know if it was. I remember looking it up not too long ago, but I can't remember specifically. He died at an early age, cancer, brain cancer, or something like that. Now I think Fred Hickman is still around there, but yeah, it was fun to take people down memory lane when it comes to that. Deshaun Campbell writes in, "Sup guys, Dave? I've heard you're a fanatic for the war documentaries, if you ever get a chance, please check out the documentary Battle of Fallujah on YouTube. It's absolutely great. Yeah, I've seen that one, Deshaun, I think. He says, but on to my question. Listening back a few episodes, you guys talked about high draft picks that were cut. And I was wondering, thinking back a few years, did you guys love the selection of Sinquez Golson? And B, did he fit that category? Because I truly don't even remember seeing him play. You don't remember seeing him play because he never played, right?
He never played a game. He never played a preseason or regular season game. Had 7 training camp practices across 4 years. Just the worst injury luck that you'll ever see. I'm trying to think back to my thoughts way back then. I think I liked the pick. I think I liked the ball skills. He was the baseball player background that helped translate to the football field. I don't think he had really an injury history at Ole Miss, just one of those things that popped up at the NFL level. So I don't really remember my thoughts in full back then, but I certainly was not sitting there saying, oh my God, what a terrible pick. He's going to be such an injury risk.
Right. And I think I misspoke when we talked about him 4, 5, 6 episodes ago. I said Ohio State, but it was Ole Miss. That's who was a corner that came out of Ohio State around the same time.
Duran Grant, I think probably you're thinking of.
Yeah, and he was the one of the few fourth rounders that didn't make
was cut initially. Yeah, he was the last 4th rounder to be cut out of training camp or out of the preseason. He was signed to the practice squad. He had appeared in a couple games as a rookie, but that was it. Also, I think to also correct the record, I believe I had said the last 3rd round pick to be cut was Ray Sidnor in 1980. I think Jerry Dulac said it was a guy in 85, corner, I forget his name, was cut. And so I missed that one. It could be so hard to kind of find exactly which guys were cut, trying to cobble all the way back into the 80s in terms of the details. So I think there was somebody right after Sidnor that did not make the initial roster as a 3rd round pick, but we both expect Drew Aller to not be the next in line.
All right, if we're correcting ourselves, I think I got one more correction for us as well too. So if people enjoy us taking look, we are human as well too. We were talking about Troy Fautano just the other show and about potential extensions and brought up the 5th-year option thing. Now remember, this is his 3rd NFL season, right?
So there is no 5th-year option upcoming, right?
Well, you've got the 5th-year decision next offseason. So assuming if you pick up the 5th-year option, then that puts the onus on getting the extension done before he goes into that 5th and final year. So if indeed Fautano next by what's the cutoff, May, or if by early May, this team picks up the 5th-year option on Troy Fautano, then next offseason's not the extension talk. It becomes him prior to him going into his 5th and final season, where they will get more into the conversation of him potentially being extended. Now, if you get into a situation where after this season you don't pick up his 5th-year option, then are you really having lucre? Are you really going to be having those extended? What happened in 2026? What that would keep you from picking up that 5th-year option? And how does that parlay into potential contract extension talks next offseason there? So that's where I had brought up the 5th-year option decision. So in a perfect world, you're hoping that you're not having contract discussions, extension talks with Fautano this time next year, because that means you picked up his 5th-year option, and then you'll be looking toward the after the 2027 season of having the contract extension talks.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I'm looking back when they exercised Watt, Fitzpatrick, they didn't do the extension until the following year, but man, the longer you wait on these guys, the more the price goes up. It's already so expensive for a tackle. I don't know. I still would consider. I know it's not their general rule of thumb, but still would consider doing a long-term deal just because that price tag is not going to go down if he keeps playing well.
Sure, but traditionally this team does not technically do contract extent. Does not, with 2 years left on a deal. They don't They don't talk
Mhm.
extensions. So,
Yeah, fair.
so I think going back to the discussion that we had, we were talking about McCormick and Frazier being in the crosshairs this time next off season. So there's
Right.
a good possibility if things go the way we hope that they go, which everybody should hope that they go, is that Fautano makes another step in his play, is playing really good, makes the decision of having the fifth-year option picked up by next May, and then you're looking towards the following offseason of having the contract discussions with him.
Fair. But there'll still at least be something contractually related to do with Fautani, even if it is just simple as exercising the fifth-year option,
Sure.
which it won't be a small number. It's going to be over $20 million, and obviously that's going to be part of the offensive line calculation when I talk about how busy it'll be in assessing offensive linemen, paying offensive linemen, looking at their contract situations. That's all going to be part of next offseason.
All right, let's take one more here from Brett Nile back in here. Wanted to ask you about a couple of potential good problems to have. He says you talked about the potential for Broderick Jones to have his contract toll. He says, isn't that a good thing? It looks like he's going to take more than a year to recover. If his contract tolls, you have a good swing tackle and he gets another year to get it right. He says, sounds like a win-win. I mean, is it necessarily a win-win situation if we're talking about Broderick Jones having his contract toll? Short term, no, it's not, because you're not going to have him be able to contribute to this team at all in 2026. And if you know, in a perfect world, you want Broderick Jones to get over this injury quickly, and at a minimum, give you, an experienced swing guy on your offensive line. I mean, I get the long term view that if the injury is the injury and the contract tolls, and isn't that a good? I suppose you can look at it that way, give him a year to recover. But I think as far as what you're wanting for the player and what you're wanting for this team, I think all hope should be that Broderick Jones progresses nicely. We get to training camp, he gets the all clear, and he's out there competing. And at a minimum, you get your good swing tackle in 2026.
Yeah, I get the reader's point that you kind of get the extra year that you didn't think you would have. You kind of get the fifth-year option year at not the fifth-year option cost. And so I get the spin of that. But as you said, that means that he was hurt all year. He didn't get to progress. And that's just never really a good thing in general. So I like to see him, and if you do want to think about, and this is many steps ahead, but if he plays out the year and becomes a free agent and signs somewhere, maybe you get a comp pick down the road. And if he tolls, then that delays that process, obviously.
All right, number two, if Spencer Anderson wins the starting guard spot, that would give Dunker a full year to convert to guard. If Anderson plays well and hits free agency, the guard tax may result in him getting a high round compensatory value. Wouldn't that be a good problem? I mean, once again, we're dealing with, well, we got a lot of hypotheticals with these first two guys. Is Broderick Jones going to be ready for the start? Is he going to have to go on PUP? If Spencer Anderson wins the starting guard spot, is he going to be able to stay healthy? Is he going to get? I see where he's going with this with long term, and are these potential good problems to have? But a lot of people, I think, at least where I'm sitting, would like to see Dunker get on the field at some point during his rookie season, even if he's not a week one starter.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What was the question? I'm still kind of lost in the Swinton news here. It's just about Dunker and his expectations.
Yeah, no, just if Spencer Anderson wins the starting guard spot, how it would be a good thing for Dunker to have a full year to be able to work on converting to guard, and then the
Mm,
guard tax maybe on Anderson if he play. A lot of ifs in there.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, let's just see what happens. There can be a benefit and a negative. There usually is. If he gets to sit and learn, that can be a good thing for a guy making that transition. But obviously, playing right away could also be a benefit. So if it just give me good offensive line play, no matter how it looks. If Pittsburgh does have the right starting five are out there, the best starting five are out there. That's the goal and the aim and the focus.
Number 3, boy, he's all about offensive linemen here and the what ifs. If Cook wins the starting right tackle spot and plays more than half a year or even the whole year, he could make that second round tender an easy decision. And along with Jones, if he tolls, may give him the opportunity to trade a starting caliber tackle. At a minimum, it would solidify your tackle depth going into 2027. He says, wouldn't that be a good problem to have? Man, Brett, you're already in come back to 2026, Brett.
For real.
I I get all this, but what I always like, as I always like to say, as much as we like to try to plan these things out and this is going to happen, the offensive line is going to look like this, and this way this thing might go. It never ends up going that way due to injury, poor play, whatever. I'm excited about 2026 into this offensive line, and we'll see what happens with Broderick Jones. We'll see what happens with Spencer Anderson. We'll see what happens with Dylan Cook, and then let's revisit a lot of maybe resend this email 1 year from today, and let's see where we're at.
All right, good deal.
I don't want to discount, you know, but and look, I like looking ahead at contracts and potential situations and all like that, and I don't blame people, but I think a lot of things that he has here in his 3 bullet points here are really out there as far as what ifs, and we'll have to see how 2026 plays out.
Yeah, I think take it one step at a time. That's kind of our focus, is just what's next, and that's how we'll approach it.
All right, 1 hour and 45 minutes on a Friday here. Had a lot of good talk. Once again, we probably could have gone a lot deeper with some of the coach talk and all like that. We'll get into what Alex Kozora wrote about the 4 offensive snaps or stats that he wrote up on the site. In the meantime, get to SteelersDepot.com. Check that post out. My salary cap post is should still be near the top as well too, as far as that's still relevant right now. I'm going to write a little bit, I think, about cash spending for my fellow nerds out there over the weekend and where the team sits as far as that goes. So it's an exciting time right now, part of the off season, team winding down, second week of the OTAs. Imagine we won't have to dig too deep. We're coming up things to talk about on Monday. So until then, you can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the ad-free button and follow the directions that way. If you'd like to speak to a manager, send it to theterriblepodcast@gmail.com, and we'll get all complaints and opinion differences out of the way in the next show. So in the meantime, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.